Yes, hello. Welcome to the second day of talks. I'm really excited with how we're starting. We're starting with Tiffany Hrabusa, and she is going to be doing a talk about, I've lost the title of the talk. A beautiful reciprocal arrangement, gaining experience and giving back through open source documentation. One of the things that really interests me about this talk, though, is we come to this community from lots of different places with lots of different backgrounds. And the ways that we come into this community, we bring things with us, how we learned, from our background, from our journey in. And so hearing sort of what gifts people come to this community with is always fascinating. And this is Tiffany talking about her journey into the community using open source documentation. And I'm really interested to hear this. So take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Abby.
Sorry, forgot one thing. Please use the Slido. The QR codes are here, and if you're joining us online, I know the link is also available. Please ask questions. I'll sum them up at the end and get some good conversation going. Sorry.
No worries. Okay. Thanks again to Abby, and a sincere thank you to all of the conference organizers and volunteers. Before I start, I'm sharing my slides now because I know it might be hard to read some of them from the back of the room. So if you want to pull them up on your device, you can follow along. Okay, I'm a little nervous, but I'm also really excited to be here this morning to get to talk about getting started in open source, what kind of experience you can gain, and how you can give back. Much of my talk applies to any open source contribution, but documentation will be our focus. Abby's introduction covered a lot of my biography, but I'll just add that I am also a dog lover. All of the practical tips that I'll share with you today are based on my own experience. And as you can see, I have no technical background. So if a lot of what I say is unfamiliar to you, don't be discouraged. I was once in your shoes. So let's get started. Before you begin, you should know what open source software is and why it matters. And you'll want to build a few necessary technical skills. Defining open source software, or OSS, can be tricky because open source licenses differ. Today, I'm using a broad definition rather than one tied to a specific license or project. OSS is free and open. This means that you can see the code, use it, change it, and share it, and there's no price tag. OSS is collaborative. Contributors come from a variety of backgrounds, locations, and industries, and even from competing companies. OSS is innovative. Its diverse community is keen to experiment with new ideas to produce exciting, feature-rich software. And finally, OSS is transparent, making its security and reliability more robust. Some people say that you shouldn't use open source for your own benefit. I think this is only partially true. You shouldn't use open source for your own benefit unless you give back to the project generously. As an open source contributor, you're volunteering your time and energy. It's okay to expect a return on that investment. But the key is you have to make that investment. For me, the economics of open source comes down to finding the balance between give and take. So, in addition to covering the practicalities of getting started, I am also including what I call balance sheets to show you the positive impact that your contributions can make and the experience you can take with you. Now that you know what open source means, what skills do you need to build before you enter the OSS ecosystem? It's a good question, and the answer depends on how much experience you have writing software documentation as code. My answer assumes you're a total beginner, like I was. I'll give you a brief list of tools and concepts you need to study, but we won't cover them in detail today, because honestly, you'll have more success learning them while sitting at your computer and trying things out as you go. If you want to contribute to open source documentation, here's my short list of prerequisites. First, learn how to use the command line. It's the foundation for all of your docs' code work. And while you can write a document from the command line, most people use an IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. I use VS Code, but there are many options to choose from. Second, you need to learn about version control, both how it works and how to use it. In my experience, Git is the most common version control system, and most of the open source projects I know use GitHub to collaborate on those version-controlled files. We'll talk a lot about GitHub today. Finally, there's Markdown. You don't need to memorize every aspect of Markdown syntax, but it is helpful to know the basics before you start contributing. I've created an appendix with a list of resources that I found helpful when I was learning. So take a look at my slides later if that interests you. And before we move on, you should know that these concepts feature heavily in my talk. So if they're new to you, come back and watch the recording later once you've gained some familiarity with them. It'll make a lot more sense. When you're ready to put your new skills to the test, it's time to pick a project. According to SourceForge.net, this is how many open source projects exist for the Linux operating system. There are slightly more for Windows and less for Mac OS. So how do you pick the right project when there are so many to choose from? My first recommendation is to find your passion. What kind of project do you care about and want to donate your time to? What industry would you like to work in? Search the internet for open source project about. For example, if you search open source project about pets, you'll find Hackapet, which builds software for animal shelters, and Pet Pals, which creates pet adoption websites. Your passion is a great foundation for your search, but there are a few other things to consider. Finding the perfect project in your niche topic might feel like a minor miracle, but trust me when I say you don't want to devote time to a project that doesn't want you. You want to find a well-supported project. Open source projects might be free to use, but they require a lot of resources to keep up and running. Time and energy, legal support, financial support. Sometimes it gets too expensive. Sometimes the maintainers lose interest or have no time. Whatever the reason, you will likely encounter dormant projects during your search. And while it's not a guarantee, the sponsorship of a foundation or a company usually means the project has adequate resources to keep going. So look into the project's history to find out if it has that support. For example, where do the project leaders work? Is it a company you've heard of? Is the company using the software? The second point is related to the first. Don't spend your time on a project that has gone dormant. You want to find a busy project, which means it has consistent activity over time and up to the present day. Study the activity in the contribution history, or conduct an experiment. Ask a legitimate question and see how long it takes them to get back to you. Finally, look for a project that needs help. This sounds silly because every open source project needs help. But some projects need more help than others, and some projects are more open to help from new contributors than others. Search for contributing guidelines and existing documentation. Does the project seem welcoming of new contributors? Are the guidelines detailed and helpful? What state are the docs in? Do they even have docs? We'll talk more about getting to know the project in the next section, but for now, use your best judgment. So far, everything you've done has been undercover. No one knows about the mess you made of that commit history during Git practice, nor do they know that you've been snooping around online. But now, you've got to take the next step, in public, and you're scared. So how do you overcome your fears and aim to succeed? One word: reconnaissance. In this section, we'll walk through step by step how to gather intelligence so you can prepare yourself to make a great first impression in an open source community. Start your reconnaissance by getting the lay of the land. Look for the project's repository, probably on GitHub. A repository, or repo, is an online place for storing files, tracking changes, and collaborative editing. Once you find the repository, figure out where the docs are stored. Sometimes there's only a little documentation, and it's in a markdown file called README. Sometimes there's a little more, and you'll find multiple markdown files in a docs folder. Bigger projects might publish their documentation to a website, but the source files for that website are probably markdown files in a repository. Next, look for the contributing guidelines. These are the rules for contributing, and every project should have them. They'll be in a file called contributing. For larger projects, each repo might have its own contributing guidelines. Find the rules, read them, and follow them. Now it's time to get to know the people. Everyone who works on an OSS project is a contributor, but some contributors have more responsibility. They're called maintainers. Learning about them is key to your success. Find out how and where contributors communicate. Look for a meeting schedule. Synchronous meetings are a great way to get a sense of the maintainers' personalities and what their priorities are. Don't worry, you can absolutely lurk in these meetings. If anyone questions you, just tell them who you are, that you're new to the project, that you're looking forward to contributing, but for now, you just want to listen and learn. Also look for the team's asynchronous chat tool, such as Slack or Discord. Sign up and find the channels where the documentarians are working. Pay attention to old threads and read new ones as you go. For example, does it seem like maintainers are specializing in different aspects of the project? What does that tell you about them? And what are they saying about the project? Do they congratulate or complain? Last, subscribe to all the project repositories that are relevant to you. Admittedly, this might lead to notification overload, but I honestly think it's one of the best ways to get a sense of people. Read the comments on issues and PRs. What do the reviewers care about? What are contributors doing well? And where are they messing up? These comments are part of the real work of an open source project, and they can be a reconnaissance goldmine. While you're getting a feel for the people and the project's logistics, don't forget to start learning about the thing you hope to document. Read the existing docs, and while you're doing this, make note of anything you would change, such as typos or clarity issues. Look for third-party materials, like blog posts or O'Reilly books. These resources are often written for beginner audiences, so they make a perfect introduction. Finally, use the software. It's Tech Writing 101, but it's easy to overlook this step when you're learning so many things at once. We've come to our first balance sheet. At this early stage, you might not be taking a very active role in the project, but your efforts aren't wasted. Here are a few ways you can give back before you even start contributing. Offer to take meeting notes so the decision makers can focus on the discussion. Were you confused by the contributing guidelines? Make notes on how you would improve them. As you read the existing docs, identify the gaps. And in the spirit of reciprocity, here's what you've gained. You've been exposed to GitHub's UI and its issue and pull request workflows. We'll talk more about these in the next section. You've started to build your professional network, and your reconnaissance has given you confidence to take the next step. Your foundation is solid, and your confidence is strong. Now it's time to start contributing. But what makes a good first issue? Just a quick reminder that it's a good idea to understand how to use the command line Git, GitHub, and Markdown before you start contributing. At this point, you'll want to read the contributing guidelines again, but this time you're reading to do. The guidelines should explain the project-specific prerequisites. For example, make sure to sign the contributor agreement, if there is one. Review the style guide, if there is one. Take note of the project's preferred workflow. Are there any other preliminary steps you need to take before you make a contribution? In many cases, projects want you to work from a fork rather than the main repository. A fork is a remote copy of the repository that you make in your own GitHub account. You can copy that fork to your personal computer, which is called cloning the fork to your local environment. If the docs are published to a website, learn how to build and test them locally. And finally, remember to create a feature branch before you start making changes. Now that your local environment is ready, there's nothing stopping you from making your first contribution. I recommend starting with something easy. Did you find typos in the docs during your reconnaissance? Fix them. If you haven't found any yet, keep looking. There's always at least one. You can follow the standard GitHub workflow to propose your typo fixes. GitHub calls this proposal a pull request, or PR. Make sure you're following the rules for PRs. Introduce yourself as a new contributor in the PR description. This notification is a soft signal to maintainers that you might need a little extra help. Finally, use this PR to get a feel for the review process and the continuous integration checks, or CI checks, that are run on each PR. You can think of CI checks as automated quality control tests. And when that first PR is merged, celebrate, and then put up your next. Now that you know how the process works, it's just a matter of finding areas to contribute to. Check the list of issues in the docs repository. Some repos might use variations, but look for labels like Good First Issue, Help Wanted, and Docs. Read through issues to find one that explains the problem very well, and maybe even offers the solution. If you feel comfortable, ask if there are ongoing projects that you can help with. Are you multilingual? Contribute to localization efforts. Finally, look for ways to contribute beyond the documentation. Proofread code comments and release notes, or write blog posts. Your early contributions are extremely valuable to open source projects. You are proactively identifying problems and fixing them, something busy maintainers usually do not have time to do. By localizing the documentation, you're bringing that project to a global audience. And what are you getting out of it? Well, this is it. You're writing docs as code. Plus, with each PR you submit, you're building your portfolio. You've made it this far. You've 007'd your way into the community and made your first contributions. But where can things go wrong? And how can you make them go right? Each open source contributor will have their own list of tips. Here are my top 3. Avoid becoming an opportunist, prepare for rigorous reviews, and pay attention to GitHub etiquette. All OSS projects are grateful for help, but no one wants help that is conditional, demanding, or self-serving. Offer help generously and not because it benefits you. Don't commit to things you know you can't follow through on. If you know it's going to be a while before you can get to that fix, leave it for another contributor. As a new contributor, it's tempting to volunteer for everything to gain as much experience as possible. Pace yourself, especially if you have other job and life commitments. Sometimes things happen, and you have to renege on a commitment. That's okay. Just communicate clearly to the maintainers that your availability has changed. Don't create a mess and then disappear. If you take on a project and you later come to find out that it's too complicated or too hard, don't abandon the PR. Ask for help first. If no one can or will help you, you can add a comment to the PR saying that you're stuck, so you're closing it for now. On some PRs, reviewers might be blunt, and you might come away feeling a little bruised. Try really hard not to take these reviews personally. Remind yourself that your reviewers are volunteers, just like you. And if they're dedicating time to reviewing your PR in such detail, it means they care about the project. Keep an open mind. Try to identify what they actually want. Sometimes that means reading between the lines of grumpiness. But there's always something to be learned. And remember, ultimately, you and your reviewers have the same goal: make the documentation as great as possible. Now, I'd like to take you through Tiffany's unofficial guide to GitHub etiquette. How do you submit PRs that impress? Check if you need to submit an issue before putting up a PR. For small changes, this usually isn't necessary. But if you're proposing a major change, it's a good idea to raise an issue so the community can discuss it first. If the repo uses an issue or PR template, read it and follow it. There's an example of a template on this slide. And it's tempting to ignore all of that text and just add your own description. But the template exists for a reason, and it might help you avoid a misstep. Plus, following the template tells maintainers that you care about their efforts and can follow instructions. Finally, always write a really good description. Explain the problem, how you're fixing it, why it's important, and include any other relevant information, like links to docs pages, async discussions, and related issues and PRs. Comments are the heart of PRs and issues. They're how reviewers express their opinions and authors explain their decisions. In an open source project, they are also public. So my first rather obvious tip is to always be polite, because you never know who's reading. I also recommend marking your comment edits clearly. If you make substantive changes to a comment that someone else has already read, it gets confusing. Use strike-through formatting or an edit notation. The screenshots here show you how to do this. In general, It's best to let your reviewers resolve their own comments. I'm talking about the open-ended comments, not the suggestions that get automatically resolved. Acknowledge the comment with an emoji, or even respond to say that it's been handled, but leave it unresolved. This gives your reviewer a chance to confirm their requested change was made. Finally, use GitHub keywords to link issues and PRs. Using this automation keeps large repos tidy. Receiving reviews is a good opportunity to practice receiving feedback graciously. You can also make your reviewer's life a little easier by following these rules. Use batch committing when you accept multiple review suggestions. I've included a couple screenshots on how to do this, but the result of batch committing is a much cleaner PR and significantly fewer notifications for your reviewers. Docs changes rarely need to be reverted, so a single commit with a lot of changes is usually safe. A lot of larger open source projects use GitHub teams and code owners to identify who should review certain PRs. If the repo has this automation, let it request reviews for you. Unless you've been told to, it's not necessary to mention specific reviewers individually. Finally, be patient. Open source projects move slowly. Most contributors have a day job and family commitments that pull them away from the project from time to time. I generally wait at least a week before requesting reviews again. If it's summertime, wait 2 weeks. And remember that your reviewer's summer may not be the same as yours. Avoiding pitfalls is a win-win. The project wins because by honoring your commitment, you bring stability. By handling rigorous reviews with professionalism, you're creating a kinder, more respectful community. And by following some simple etiquette, you're valuing the time and effort of your fellow contributors. And you win because if you do make mistakes, this is the place to make them. It's a safe space, and there are no performance reviews. Your GitHub savvy will make a great first impression. And you're showing your new colleagues that you're a person they want to work with. You've conquered all the beginner milestones. So how do you turn getting started into thinking long-term? Or to put it another way, you're an OSS contributor. Now what? You've reached the point where you can start looking for bigger, more interesting ways to contribute. Build a steady series of contributions. Look for meatier issues, such as adding examples to the documentation. Look for opportunities to learn and use new skills. Create a diagram using Mermaid.js. Study the CI checks so you can help troubleshoot common errors for other contributors. Develop deeper relationships with your subject matter experts. Attend their meetings if they're separate from the docs meetings, and find out what they would like to improve in the docs. At this stage in your contributor journey, the balance between giving and receiving is complete. You are going beyond the paper cuts and making substantial, meaningful improvements. You're focused on the user experience, and you're looking for ways to simplify the process of creating and publishing documentation. And with your deeper commitment comes significant benefits. Your portfolio contains a wide variety of materials. You've gone beyond casual acquaintance and developed real relationships with your OSS colleagues. Finally, you have proof of in-demand skills. Plus, you have the confidence to know that learning new things is a challenge you can meet. We've reached the end, so let's do a quick recap. You know the basic skills you need to learn. You know how to pick a project and gather intelligence before you start contributing. You know what makes a good first issue and where to look for the next one. You can avoid common mistakes, and you know what it takes to become a long-term contributor. You've done the hard thing. Practically speaking, we want all of this toil to literally pay off with a paycheck. Is it guaranteed to work? No, of course not. But if you put in the time and effort, here's what I can assure you. Your confidence will soar. Your resume and cover letter will be full of the experiences you've racked up. When you get asked in an interview, tell me about a time when you'll have 5 different examples you can give. When you see a job posting and your OSS colleague works at the company, you will not hesitate to ask for that referral. Your portfolio will speak for itself. Your skill set will match the job description. And your network will multiply with valuable connections. And if your OSS contributions do lead to your dream job, like they did for me, remember to balance the scales one last time. Pass on your knowledge to new contributors, and especially to new tech writers. Pay it forward. This quote from a great American novel sums it up pretty well. You'll learn from them if you want to, just as someday, if you have something to offer, someone will learn something from you. It's a beautiful, reciprocal arrangement. Thank you.
Well, that was great. I particularly loved the dog pictures.
That's where I spent the most time making the slides. Hours and hours of looking at dog pictures.
Oh, darn. That must have been such a strain.
Hardship, yeah. They're all from Unsplash, by the way, and there's a credit slide, so you can check out the photographers who made them. It's pretty cool.
Great. I loved it. So we do have some questions in the Slido that I would like to get some good answers from you. So you've talked a lot about the ways that someone who is doing the documentation can approach this interaction. Mm-hmm. So now, to turn it around, do you have any ideas for open source project maintainers to make it more likely that people will contribute to the docs, including noobs?
I think encouragement is the number one thing. Anytime you see a new GitHub handle in your repository, you should be enthusiastic and encouraging and just super welcoming, because you never know if that person's going to turn into your co-maintainer someday down the road. But also, that's what happened to me. I had some really great experiences. Fabrizio is one of my mentors in the project, and it really makes a huge difference if someone coming in just feels welcome.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think that's really important. And actually, the next question is kind of the flip side of that side of the culture. We've had a number of people who have upvoted it. Do you have any advice on how to identify and avoid the toxic environments that can sometimes occur in open source projects and teams? Because we have to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the reconnaissance comes in. You can learn a lot about people before you actually put yourself into that toxic situation. So if you do find that the project you've picked is not a healthy place to be, keep looking and find something else.
Yeah, good advice, because it is, if anybody can start a project, everyone will start a project. So out of curiosity, which projects have you contributed to, and which ones have you enjoyed a lot?
My husband built a hacky piece of software for tennis court reservations, and so I wrote documentation for that, which is open source. Don't go read it. It's really bad.
Okay.
But now I'm involved in the Open Telemetry project, which is a CNCF incubating project. I started there like a year and a half ago, and you saw my first PR. It was on the screen. I just did exactly what I've told you in the talk and just kept building things up and sticking around. If you stick around, that's really the biggest thing you can do.
That actually ties into another question, which is, how did you deal with the learning curve of getting into the topic of open telemetry? Because
Yeah, I cried a lot.
This is a well-known technique. Yes, I have cried many times in learning curves. It's part of the process. It's legit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I was not working at the time. So I had a lot of time to devote to the learning. And that is definitely an advantage that I do not take for granted. But I think it's just step by step. My appendix does have a list of like the courses and things that I used, so you can go check those out. But just go step by step. And the really good thing to remember is that all of this practice that you're doing, nobody sees it, nobody knows. So you can make all kinds of mistakes, and you'll learn from those too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I really liked was that sort of, remember to value your own contributions. It is a balance sheet. You're doing both sides of it. So one person was asking, or two people were asking, a more sort of broad scale question. Do you feel like open source in general is slowing down, perhaps compared to it was 5 years ago?
I
think this is
no
some people's
idea
experience.
because I wasn't in the ecosystem 5 years ago.
Fair.
But I can tell you the project that I'm in right now is just ramping up.
Okay.
So that's where you really want to do some research. If you're looking to really create a presence in an open source project, find one that's on the rise and has a lot of support.
Yeah, because they do have a life cycle where there'll be a burst of enthusiasm, and some of them will burst and die, and some of them will burst and climb for a while, and some of them have done their climb and are now, identifying where it is in the life cycle. So another person has asked, are there any specific search boards or anything like that to check for projects looking for contributors? Is there any sort of central
I don't know.
Not very central.
So sourceforge.net, where I pulled that extremely large number from, is kind of a compendium of like every open source project out there. So you could use that to search. But honestly, if it's an open source project and it's on GitHub, Google has probably scraped it. And so if you search open source project about literally anything, you'll probably find projects that out there.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was a really great talk, not just for the dogs either. You're proving your documentarianship, if you will, by the way you documented that process in a reader-friendly fashion with examples and visual. Great. You're definitely one of the tribe now, one of us.
Thank you.